Hello and welcome back to Kim Reads as we continue with Molly Learns a Lesson. Chapter 2, Lend a Hand. The day dragged on forever after the multiplication bee. At lunch, Molly felt as if she had a sore throat. She opened her lunch bag and looked inside. Mrs. Guilford had packed a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Molly took a bite. It got stuck in her throat. She decided she was getting the mumps. And reading, which was usually Molly's favorite subject, she didn't get a chance to read out loud because Miss Campbell stopped the reading group early. Miss Campbell stood in front of the room and raised both hands in signal for quiet. All the rustling and chair squeaks and whispers stopped when she said, "Class, I have a special announcement to make. If I may have your attention, please." Molly looked up. A special announcement? Must be something good, she could tell, because Miss Campbell's face looked pink and pleased. Our class has been invited to participate in a school-wide contest. It's called the Lend a Hand contest. Every student is challenged to lend a hand to help the war effort. Every class will be divided into teams. You may wish to divide yourself into teams in any way you wish. Boys against girls, said Howie definitely. Boys against girls, all the boys muttered in agreement. Mrs. Campbell waited for quiet. Well, that will be fine if that's the way you want to do it. You may choose any kind of project you wish, but it must be something to help us soldiers in the war effort. At the end of the contest, the winning team will receive an award at a school assembly. Now, you only have 1 weekend to do the project from start to finish. Plan your projects today. Work on them tomorrow. Bring them in on Monday. Remember, you'll be competing against boys and girls in the 4th and 5th grades. So for sure, you choose to do a very project and work hard on it. The classroom was awash in a sea of voices as the teams discuss different ideas for their projects. Linda waved to Susan while Allison whispered to Grace. Woody sat up at the desk talking to Howie over Grace's head. Then Susan leaned over to Molly. What should we do? She asked. I don't know, said Molly. She tried to think of a spectacular project. Collect $1,000 and buy a war bond? No, too hard. Roll bandages? Too boring. Collect newspapers? Everyone did that. The third grade girls just had to win the contest. Just think of how pleased Miss Campbell would be. Molly would work harder than anyone else on the project, and when they won, they'd have their picture in the newspaper. Probably with Miss Campbell. Third grade girls win a big hand to a war effort. It would say under the picture, and Miss Campbell would send the picture to the soldier using the attitude, and he'd write back, Let's ask Molly McIntyre to begin our wedding. What a wonderful idea. Dear Allison, I think that's a fine project for the third girls. You certainly have your thinking cap on today. On the blackboard, Miss Campbell wrote, knit socks. Knit socks, Molly thought. That's a terrible idea. What Molly knew all about knitting socks, well, she really didn't know all about it, but she knew it was hard. Molly had struggled through knitting lessons with Mrs. Guilford. She'd not been able to finish even one socks. Socks took a long time. They were complicated. By the time Mrs. Guilford finished the sock, it looked like she had already marched 1,000,000 miles. The third girls would never win the contest, and they chose knitting socks as a project. Molly just had to say something, but as she started to raise her hand, Susan leaned over and whispered, Wouldn't that be fun? We can make hundreds of socks if we all knit this weekend. Molly brought her hand down. No one would listen to her now. All the other girls were gathered in a bunch around Allison's desk. They decided to unravel old sweaters or ask their mothers for yarn scraps they could use. Allison was smiling and nodding, writing something on a piece of paper. That Allison, thought Molly, it would be her idea. Always trying to get in good with Miss Campbell. Well, Molly wasn't going to let Allison tell her what to do. She wasn't going to let Allison lead all the girls in the class in some dumb project that wouldn't even work. Molly sat at her desk thinking hard. It wasn't easy to concentrate because all the boys around her were talking loudly about their project. Woody Halsey wanted to dig an air raid shelter for the school. All we need would be some shovels, he kept saying. Howie's idea won out. He suggested the boys collect tinfoil and send it to be made into tanks and trucks for the soldiers. We'll make a ball of tinfoil 6 feet wide, he said grandly. We'll roll it up the aisle during the assembly. The boys were impressed. On the blackboard, Miss Campbell wrote, Boys, collect tinfoil for ball. When the dismissal bell rang, Miss Campbell said, "Thank you for working hard today. Good luck on your projects. Now line up quietly. Where's your hat, Grace? Put on your coat all the way on, Howie. I'll see you Monday." Molly led the line of third graders marching down the stairs and out of the school building into the pale November sunshine. Knit socks, she thought. It's a bad idea. It really is. Molly didn't think that because it was Allison's idea either. She hopped on one foot and then on the other, waiting for Linda and Susan. "I won't knit socks," Molly decided. "I'll think of another project that'll win the contest, and then Allison and Miss Campbell will see who has her thinking cap on." Molly, Linda, and Susan usually walked home together. On most days, they stopped and played at Molly's house because Mrs. Guilford, the housekeeper, was at home to keep an eye on them. Mrs. McIntyre usually did not get home from her job at Red Cross until dinner time. And Molly's and Linda's mother worked in the airplane factory every afternoon. When the girls got up to the back door of Molly's house, Molly flung it open, took a deep breath, and shouted, "Hooray, bread day!" Mrs. Guilford replied with 3 brisk commands. "Come in, wipe your feet, sit at the table like ladies." The kitchen was steamy. It smelled like warm raisins. Mrs. Guilford stood at the table behind an army of bowls and measuring cups. She nodded to the girls and pointed with the end of her wooden spoon to the 3 plates on the table in front of them. "These are your sample slices," she said. On each plate there was a thick brown piece of bread, heavy with raisins. "It's round," said Susan. "Boston brown bread," replied Mrs. Guilford, "baked in an old coffee tin. Not a speck of sugar or butter in it." Molly picked up her bread and took a bite. "This is a good one, Mrs. Guilford." "I like this bread," said Linda. "Me too," said Susan. "It tastes like Christmas." "I like the smell," said Molly with her mouth full. "If I had perfume, I'd want it to smell just like this." You probably had all the dogs in the neighborhood following you around," snorted Mrs. Guilford. But Molly could tell she was pleased. Making bread was one of the things Mrs. Guilford did to help the war effort. Every week she tried a new bread recipe. Molly, Linda, and Susan were her official testing committee. Out of all the breads Mrs. Guilford had tried so far, only one had not met with everyone's approval. That was the red bread made with tomato juice. Molly and Linda begged Mrs. Guilford to never make it again, but Susan voted for it because it was pink. Making bread from scratch during wartime was not easy. Mrs. Guilford had to figure out a substitute for things that were hard to get, like butter and sugar. But Mrs. Guilford rose to the challenge just as her loaves of bread rose high and brown and delicious. Of all the changes the war had brought to the McIntyre household, the only one Molly could absolutely positively say she liked was Mrs. Guilford's homemade bread. Today Mrs. Guilford had a pamphlet called "How to Bake" by the ration book popped up between a milk bottle and a sack of flour. Molly watched Mrs. Guilford sift some flour through a strainer. She was making a small snowstorm into a bowl in the kitchen. It looked fun. You could make a mess, but it wouldn't get you into trouble. "Can I sift it?" she asked Mrs. Guilford. "May I sift it? And no, you may not. Not in your school clothes. You'll be covered all with flour. Trot upstairs, put on your plaited clothes, and then you may sign up to be doughboy." "That would take too much time," said Linda. "I don't think I'd better," said Molly. "We have to work on our project." Mrs. Guilford looked up. "What project?" "Well, there's a lend a hand contest at school. We're supposed to do a project to help with the war effort. We only have this weekend to do it. Whoever does the project wins a prize," explained Molly. "And what's your project?" asked Mrs. Guilford with interest. "We don't know yet," said Molly. "Yes, we do," said Susan. She gave Molly a puzzled look. "We're knitting socks, hundreds of socks, just like you do, Mrs. Guilford." Mrs. Guilford poured milk into a measuring cup. "I see," she said. "Well, good luck to you. You may take another slice of bread if you wish. No crumbs on the floor, please. Come to me if you decide to need knitting needles and yarn." "Thank you, Mrs. Guilford," the girls said. They each took another slice of bread off the loaf. They went outside and walked over the garage. There was a storage room above the garage, and the girls liked it there. It was a private place they could use as a clubhouse. They climbed the stairs to the storage room, already nibbling their second slices of bread. And that's the end of that chapter. See you later.